Hey, anatomist. It's Brooke here with your first video of the school year. And so here we're looking at our first unit in anatomy, and that's called the Unit 1, Organization of the Body. And here we go with our first concept, anatomy basics. So you can think of this as your introduction. Okay, so we're going to start at the very beginning thinking about vocabulary. Anatomy is the study of bodily structures. We can think about that in two ways. Gross anatomy is the really big stuff, so the macroscopic stuff. And it's basically like what you think of when in your brain right now when you think of like what anatomy might be. But we're also going to be taking a look at the microscopic anatomy of our body. And so we do this at two different levels. We're going to be looking at different types of tissues. We call that histology. And we're going to be taking a look at different cells. And we call that cytology. Okay, so as anatomy is the study of bodily structures, physiology is going to be the study of the functions. Anatomy, structure, physiology, function. And one of the big ideas all across biology, not just anatomy as well, is just how this relationship works. How does the structure of things in the world lead to their functions? Okay, so let's focus the next couple of slides here on the organization of the body. So we're all organisms and we're made up of organ systems. Get it? Organism, organ systems, which are made up of organs, which are then made up of tissues, which in turn are made up of cells. Okay, so one of the big takeaways here is that this idea of homeostasis or keeping our body in balance, or what some might call the dynamic equilibrium, this is maintained all over the body, all the way down to the cellular level. There is nothing that works in isolation. So even the different organ systems work together. So for instance, when you just had breakfast or lunch or whatever the meal that you most recently ate was, it went into your digestive system. Those nutrients then got filtered out by your liver, went into your circulatory system, which then pumped those nutrients all around the body to all of the different tissues, including your skeletal system tissues, your muscular system tissues, and so on and so forth. So nothing works by itself. It all works together. All right, so congratulations. Here is your first naked guy of the year in anatomy. We're going to be seeing a lot of naked guys in anatomy, and this guy is here to represent an organism. So as we just mentioned, organisms are made from organ systems, which in turn are made from organs. Here's the digestive system. Here's the stomach, which is an organ that belongs in the digestive system. That organ is made up of different types of tissues. So there are some tissues that line the inside of it. There are some muscular tissues that help it move, and so on. And those tissues are made up of different types of cells. And then those cells have their own organelles inside of them. And those organelles are made from macromolecules, which are made from molecules, which in turn are made from atoms. Phew. So there's a lot that goes into the making of a naked guy or the making of you. Okay, so here this idea is in words. All living things are organized. We're organisms. Do you see a theme here? So organisms are made of organ systems. Each organ system is composed of an organ. We talked about the digestive system in the stomach. This organ is made of different types of tissues. So within the stomach, there's some muscle tissue. That's what you hear rumbling when you're hungry, or it squeezes the food out once you've started to digest it, squeezes it into the small intestine. And then each of those tissues are made of cells. That particular type of muscle tissue is made from smooth muscle cells. These are muscles or the type of cells that you can't control. And so just a little flow chart, we're going from the naked guy to the organ system, to the organ, to the tissues, to the cells. Okay, so the reason that our bodies can be organized this way, and it's not just human bodies, this is any multicellular organism that lives on planet Earth. This all comes about because of cell division. and because of a process called differentiation. So we're going to spend a moment here taking a look at cells. And so cells, as you guys know, are the most basic structural and functional unit of life. You guys know that from ninth grade biology, that everything on planet Earth is made from cells. And we can think about cells as the smallest part of an organism that are still capable of all of life's processes. So the study of cells is cytology. And we're going to spend some time doing some cytology work this term. Okay, so something to think about in terms of the planet is that cells are really diverse, not just within your own body, but across across life on Earth. So this is a flashback to ninth grade biology. We've got different types of cells at the very basic level. We have cells that do not have a nucleus or any membrane-bound organelles. Those guys we call the prokaryotes. Those are bacteria and archaea. And then we have the eukaryotes, the ones that have a true nucleus. And those guys include plants, animals, fungi, and protists. But each of those cells are really different. So if you look at a plant cell, you're going to find organelles that animals don't have, and you'll find structures that fungi don't have. And protists are like a whole different ballgame. There's a whole lot of happening in the protist kingdom. And so what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of diversity. And even within our own bodies, we think that there's about 200 types of specialized cells. And just a reminder, cells are made up of organelles. And these are some specialized structures within the cell that work together to help the cell function. And while we're talking about cells, I wanted to take a second just to think about how big cells are, or I guess in this case, how tiny. And so what you see on your screen is a coffee bean, and there's a grain of rice. This is some font that's 12 point. I'm going to start zooming in. You can see a sesame seed, and now there's the grain of salt there. Now we're starting to see some cells. So smaller than a grain of salt, we've got an amoeba or paramecium, which are a couple of things that you may have seen in ninth grade biology under the microscope or maybe elsewhere in your lives. So here's the largest cell in the human body, the egg cell. The smallest cell happens to be the sperm. And in between, we've got red blood cells and skin cells. And this is a structure, a type of nerve cell called a photoreceptor, which is one of the rods in your eye. So smaller than a paramecium, which is smaller than a grain of salt. And now we're going to get even smaller. Inside the cell, we've got our organelles like the mitochondria and chromosomes. And oh, here's our friend baker's yeast. We spent a lot of time with that in ninth grade. An E. coli bacterium. And there's that powerhouse of the cell, which is even bigger than a bacterium. And then if we get smaller, we can take a look at all of these different types of viruses. So this is the virus that causes HIV, and the virus that causes the common cold or hepatitis, a liver disease, or the flu. And then we can get even smaller and take a look at some of these other organelles like a ribosome, or some of the macromolecules in our body like nucleic acids like tRNA. Here's a protein called hemoglobin, which is found in your red blood cells. There's an antibody, which is part of your immune system. And hey, look, there's the phospholipid. Glucose is getting even smaller. Adenine's one of your amino acids, or sorry, not amino acids. It's one of your nucleotides that make up DNA, one of the GCATs. And methionine is an amino acid. And we can get even smaller and get in to see the carbon atom. And so part of the reason I wanted to show you that, to give you that sense of scale, is just as a reminder that even though we've been talking about the organization of life, just a reminder that there still is this like size hierarchy, even when we get down into the cell and molecular level. Okay, so how is it that we can have 200 different types of cells in our body? And the answer to that is it's down to something called differentiation. So this is the process of a pluripotent cell, like a stem cell, or something that's undifferentiated, that can undergo specialization to become a specific type of cell with a specific function. And so here are some different examples of different types of of cells that we're going to see as we go through this course. And what makes that possible is something called gene expression. So even though every single cell in your body has a nucleus with all the same DNA in it, only particular genes are expressed, meaning only particular genes are turned on, which makes a muscle cell and a spleen cell and an eyeball cell an eyeball cell. And so it's the organelles that make up the cell structure that can tell us what type of job that cell is going to do. So here again, that big idea from biology, the structure, the relationship between structure and function. So form is going to dictate function. We'll see that over and over and over again in anatomy. Okay, last thing I wanted to check in with you about is just like what are tissues made of? Like, what is all this stuff made of? So we already mentioned that cells, and the study of cells is called cytology. The study of tissues is called histology. And when cells are organized into tissues, they're going to work together for a common function. And so I just wanted to point out that almost like the majority of our living tissues, the most of our body is made out of water. And in fact, it's kind of the same composition as seawater, which is not an accident, right? Life on planet Earth evolved in the sea. And water is really one of the reasons that life on planet Earth is possible. It has particular like special things about it, right? I don't know if you ever heard me say the poem, sticky wicky, not so hot, floats when frozen, dissolves a lot. Water can be cohesive and adhesive, meaning it sticks together. It's sticky wicky, which gives it capillary action, which helps us move things through our bodies. For instance, sticky wicky, not so hot. It has a really high heat capacity. That's why we don't overheat on the soccer pitch or even on the ice skating rink, right? Is because water helps keep us cool. It dissolves a lot. So sticky wicky, not so hot, floats when frozen, dissolves a lot. That last point, dissolves a lot, just means that it can be a home for all of these other things that make up us. So the macromolecules and molecules, and then even the really small inorganic molecules, things like calcium and sodium and chloride, things that help us function on this microscopic level, and other small molecules like oxygen or carbon dioxide, which are being moved through our body and serving particular functions as they do so. And so that's where we're going to leave it today. Just closing out the organization of the body, concept 1 of unit 1. Let me know if you've got any questions. Look forward to seeing you soon.